Welcome to Missing Chronicles, where we delve into the heartbreaking and enigmatic mysteries surrounding disappearances. Here, we will immerse ourselves in the world of unsolved cases, thrilling search efforts, and intricate journeys. The goal of this channel is to spread awareness, foster community connections, and provide support to the families and loved ones of the missing. Join me as we embark on a suspenseful journey, hoping to uncover the truth behind these missing chronicles. Help us sustain and grow Missing Chronicles by becoming a patron on Patreon. Your contribution ensures that we can continue our investigations, share compelling stories, and work towards a world where no one is forgotten. Join us in making a lasting impact today. Baffling disappearances, vanishing without a trace in unusual circumstances. In the early part of the 18th century, Owen Pathfitz and his family lived in a small town in the west of England known as Shepton Mallet. Shepton Mallet is a civil parish in the Mendip district of Somerset with a current population of approximately 10,000 people, though it would have been fewer over 250 years ago. It is unclear how many siblings Owen actually had, but it is understood that he had one older sister named Mary, who was 15 years older. During his younger years, Owen was apprenticed by his father and put to work as a tailor. It was stated that he learned this trade well but hated sewing day in and day out. Owen grew tired of this and eventually enlisted as a soldier. For many years after enlisting, Owen was somewhat forgotten. His parents had passed away at this point, and all that was left was Mary. Sometimes she would receive reports stating where in the world he was on active duty, but by and large, she often had no idea where her younger brother was. Eventually, Owen did return to Mary, though many years had passed, and he was now crippled and suffered harshly from rheumatism. He did say that he loved his time serving, but it was clear that the time spent fighting had taken its toll. While Owen was still able-bodied in the sense that he could still walk, his movements were very slow. His plan was to get back into tailoring to help support himself and Mary, who were now living together. Their house was just off the main streets, with a garden connected to it. This was quite a rural home at the time and was completely surrounded by forestry and fields for miles in every direction. There was a nice small community in the area, and Owen would often sit in the garden and talk with some of his friends who he met there. However, over time, Owen's rheumatism only got worse, and in the end, he couldn't walk or even move much without help. Towards the end, for years now, he could barely even move his hands, never mind his feet or legs. This makes his disappearance just that much stranger. As said, Owen was 65 years old, and Mary was now 80, so she was quite a bit older but did care for Owen. However, she had gotten much weaker and struggled to move him by herself, so, in the afternoon of a June day in 1768, Mary asked one of her neighbors by the name of Susanna Snook, who lived no more than 50 yards away, to come and help her. Together, they managed to take Owen to his usual chair in the garden. Owen always wore comfortable night clothing at this point and always had his coat with him in the garden. After Susanna made Owen comfortable, she went back inside to Mary and then left for her home through the back door. Now, this is where things get bizarre. Mary had planned to sit with Owen outside in the garden but first wanted to tidy the cottage. This took her approximately 30 minutes, and when she went outside to join Owen, he wasn't there. She looked around briefly, but he was nowhere to be seen. She then went to retrieve Susanna, who was left dumbfounded and had no idea where he could have gone. Remember, this is a man who can barely move at this point, and yet the garden seat was empty, and Owen was nowhere to be found. To make matters even stranger, the nearby fields surrounding the cottage were full of people, as it was the haymaking season, and yet no one had seen anything. Mary was obviously distraught, and Susanna had another look around and asked Mary if she had heard anything, but she hadn't. Susanna also detailed that the chair was left in the same position as she had left it. The pair raised the alarm, and the neighbors, alongside those working in the fields, got together and made a thorough sweep of the area. This included searching around the cottage, the fields, the nearby forestry, and the town, but there was no sign of him. This was regarded as highly unusual given his condition and the fact that he really shouldn't have been able to get very far. In addition to this, nearby ponds and wells were searched, ditches were scoured, and outhouses were inspected, but these searches didn't find any trace as to where Owen had gone. Here is a quote from author Mrs. Lang, who wrote about this disappearance in her book titled The Strange Story Book. Why would anyone wish to hide a harmless or crippled man in any of these places? It didn't make sense. Nobody stopped to ask how this could have been done in broad daylight. But, in spite of the thorough nature of the hunt, which did not cease even during a sharp thunderstorm and went on all that night and the next day, neither then nor later was any trace ever found of Owen Pathfitz. Thus, was an old publication that dated back to 1912 and was the oldest piece of documentation that I could find regarding this disappearance. Dr. Butler, who would be the future Bishop of Lichfield, took a particular interest in this disappearance, though it isn't clear why. Dr. Butler led the investigation. A sort may have happened, but unlike today's times, things were not documented so thoroughly. Dr. Butler first questioned whether Owen had been taken by someone but conceded that it was very unusual that nothing was heard. He also detailed that if that was the case, then the many people in the fields should have seen or heard something. He also inquired as to whether Owen was actually crippled or not, on whether he simply intentionally disappeared. However, this was disputed pretty much immediately, with locals telling him that Owen hadn't been on his feet in years. Bizarrely, there was a rumor that a person fitting Owen's description had been wandering near Frome, roughly 12 miles away, in a field, but that was deemed impossible. Some bones were eventually found near the area in 1814. But they were discovered as belonging to a female who had passed away years prior. The locals attributed Owen's disappearance to demons, stating that they believed that he had been taken by them. To this day, no one knows what happened to Owen Pathfitz or where he went. Dr. Butler said that he gave up and stated that it was an impossible riddle to solve. Many articles on this disappearance state that Owen seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Music. Rosemary Kunst, 70 years old at the time of her disappearance, was a confident and experienced outdoors woman who loved to go hiking and camping. Rosemary was married to a man named Bud, but unfortunately, the pair were involved in a car accident in February 1999, which resulted in Bud's passing. Needless to say, Rosemary was left devastated by this loss and spent most of her time alone or with her family. But over time, she did start to open up again. 18 months after this incident, Rosemary decided that it was time to get back out into the world, as she felt that it would be therapeutic and would help with her recuperation. So, on August 18, 2000, Rosemary decided to make a trip to Spirit Lake in California to hike in the wilderness around the area. This was a backpacking trip with the Earth Circle group based in Wetchpeck, California. It is an organization run by Native American Carrick Tribe Chief and Elder Charlie Redhawk Tom. This group would annually visit the remote Spirit Lake area of the Marble Mountains Wilderness, part of the Klamath National Forest and west of Mount Shasta. Spirit Lake is only accessible from one direction, with steep banks around it and tree cover making access difficult, apart from the trail at the northern end of the lake. Unfortunately, I couldn't find out much about this lake and why it was named as such, only that it's a 21-mile lightly trafficked out and back trail located near Sums Bar, California. AllTrails.com states that it features beautiful wildflowers and is rated as moderate in terms of difficulty. Redhawk and his group traveled to Spirit Lake once a year to hold spiritual ceremonies at the site. It was reported that Rosemary was eager to do this as she was hoping to reconnect with her late husband's spirit. These ceremonies consisted of dances and other activities with the intention of helping to bring their Native American ancestors back down to the earth. On August 17, 2000, this ceremony would be repeated, with Rosemary present. The group set up camp around the lake and, having done this for years, were very prepared. They had plenty of food and water, and everyone present had pitched their tents. After preparing the site, the entire group, including Rosemary, participated in their spiritual practices, which they believed would make contact with the ancients. The exact time when the ceremonies ended is unclear. But afterwards, the group took to their tents and went to bed. The following day, Redhawk laid out plans for the day and said that they were going for a day's hike and would return to the camp that evening. It's not clear why, but Rosemary declined this invitation and instead wanted to do her own shorter hike. Perhaps she didn't feel like she could hike for the entire day, but whatever the case may be, Rosemary asked Redhawk's 12-year-old son, Shalak, if he wanted to do some lighter hiking with her instead. Shalak declined, however, preferring to go with his father. With that, Rosemary got some of her belongings together, including a packed lunch and some water, and headed off to Willow Creek, which is on the southern part of Spirit Lake. It was at some point during this hike that Rosemary went missing. What was particularly interesting about this and what made this disappearance somewhat unusual was that the southern part of the lake had no obvious exits other than going back the way she had entered that section. The only other way, after that, would be to travel much further south and ascend steep hillsides of up to a 70-degree angle, something that no one could believe this 70-year-old woman could have achieved, perhaps not even with help. Redhawk and the rest of his Earth Circle group returned to the camp at around 5 p.m. and quickly realized that Rosemary wasn't present. Redhawk dispatched some members of the group to Willow Creek, and they searched until 1 a.m. the following Saturday morning, but they returned and said that there was no sign of her. The group struggled but did manage to find a phone signal, and it was then reported to the Siskiyou Sheriff's Department, who were now aware of the situation. The Sheriff's Department acted quickly, and search dogs, helicopters, and rescue crews from 3 separate counties arrived on the scene. At this point, it's worth noting that the weather was not good. It was windy, rainy, and cold, with temperatures around 8 degrees Celsius or high 40s Fahrenheit. Tom Walsh, a race steward who had completed this race every year for 16 years prior to 2012, was present on the day that Paul went missing. Given his experience on the mountain, Tom would always wait at the top to ensure the others had made it. The race started at around 3:15 p.m. that day, and Paul managed to reach the top at around 5:54 p.m. As more racers made it to the checkpoints, lots of them waited together for around 45 minutes to ensure everyone was present. They then made their way back down the mountain, and Paul asked how far away he was from the top. Tom and the others told him that it was around another 200 feet. And with that, he went on his way. They estimated that it should have taken him around an hour and a half to make it to the top and back down to the finishing line. However, Paul never came back down, and after waiting for some time, he was reported missing. The authorities began the search immediately, given the challenging weather conditions. Search and rescue teams were called to the mountain, and a thorough search was conducted. However, no trace of Paul was found. The search dogs, thermal detection-equipped helicopters, and searchers on the ground found no evidence of his whereabouts. No footprints, signs of struggle, or any items belonging to Paul were discovered. The searchers commented that this was highly unusual, as they expected to find something that would give them an indication of what happened. After the official search reached its conclusion, volunteers continued to comb the area, but still, nothing was found. Paul was the only person who has ever gone missing during the Mount Marathon run, and not only did he disappear, but the circumstances puzzled everyone involved. The question of where he went remains unanswered to this day. On July 4, 2012, 65-year-old Paul Michael LaMetrie disappeared from Mount Marathon in Alaska. Mount Marathon is known for its challenging route, with steep cliffs, mud, and shale. The race covers approximately 3.1 to 3.5 miles, starting in the city of Seward and ending back in Seward. The runners can be seen by the crowd, even up on the mountain. During the race, Paul managed to reach the top but never returned. Despite an extensive search effort, including helicopters equipped with infrared radar, thermal detection, and a team of up to 60 searchers, no trace of Paul was found. The search was called off after 4 days, but volunteers and searchers continued to look for him without success. These cases of disappearances under highly unusual circumstances, where no trace is left behind, continue to baffle searchers and investigators. Thank you for watching Missing Chronicles. We have explored captivating stories and searched for answers behind the vanished. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay updated with our latest videos. Share these videos to spread the message and assist affected families and loved ones. If you have any information related to the cases we've discussed, please leave them in the comments section. Together, we can make a difference. See you in the next Missing Chronicles.